It's Wacky Anime Whatif here to present you with What If Deku and Bill Cipher Made a Deal, Part 3. Before we get into this, I'm really happy that I ended up getting a comment from one of my favorite What If YouTubers, Xether. I love his content. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Currently, in what looks like Izuku's room, him and Bill are both conversing about what to do about the fact that Izuku does not have all of his Dream Demon abilities yet. As Izuku's asking Bill why he doesn't have all of his power yet, immediately Bill says, "Be careful what you wish for." But anyway, the power takes a few weeks to kick in. You're essentially just a baby demon right now. Baby Dream Demon, essentially. Your powers will grow. The more you survive, the longer that you stay alive, the stronger you get. Look where I am, after all, as he points towards himself, as a circle appears behind him, showing all the elements he controls. As he says, "Why don't we start with your first lesson?" As he snaps his fingers, and they're no longer in Izuku's room, but they're now in a forest. And there's desks everywhere. He says, "Go ahead and sit down, young Padawan." As Izuku says, "Did you just make a Star Wars reference?" And Bill Cipher says, Yes, I did. Now sit down." As Izuku sits down, he notices that Bill Cipher has extended his hand out. As he did, blue flames appeared. And as the blue flames started to burn, as he immediately put his hand towards the forest and started to set it on fire, Izuku couldn't help but find the beauty in the destruction of the forest. As the flames grow bigger and bigger, he felt more as if he was cheering for them to destroy everything, cheering for the flames itself. He found them fascinating, as if they have some sort of intergalactic or universal wisdom in them. As Bill looks at Izuku, who's completely fascinated by the flames and staring at them as they burn all the trees and all the wildlife around them. Immediately, Bill says, "You're quite fascinated in them, aren't you? Well, that's a good sign. After all, every dream demon needs their flames." As he says this, Izuku looks at him and says, "So, how do I do that exactly?" As he says that, Bill says, "Well, I can't exactly teach you them. I just wanted to show you. I can't teach you that part, but you will develop them later on. What I'm going to teach you now, though, is gravity magic. Well, as you say it. So, the first thing you need to do is this. You need to channel everything inside of you. You need to close your eyes, sit on the ground, and meditate." As Bill says this, Izuku follows the instructions down to the letter. As he's on the ground, meditating, he says, "Clear your mind and envision an entire galaxy around you." And as that's happening, Izuku has his mind closed. And then he feels something different, as if everything shifted. As he opens his eyes once more when Bill said so, he looks around only to see he's in space. He's floating. This is quite odd. It's a different type of experience for him. It's as if he could do anything while he's in space. As he looks around and feels absolute comfort here. As Cipher is also there beside him, saying, "Well, I see that you find this is quite comforting. I usually come here too, whenever I want to clear my mind, or if I want to find another planet to cause more chaos in." And as he says this, Izuku says, "It's quite wonderful." And Cipher says, "Yes, but we're not here for sightseeing. Channel everything around you. Channel the space. Channel the gravity, and channel the air." And Izuku says, "But there's no air in space." And Cipher just looks at him and just takes off his top hat, places it beside him, and it levitates, and then he smacks the back of his head and says, "Nerd." While Izuku tries to focus on all the steps that he said, except for the air part. After all, there's no air in space. As he channels everything around him, or tries to, he feels some familiar force, one that he felt as if he had his entire life. As it starts to get closer towards him, and he starts to feel more energized, he opens his eyes once again, only to reveal he's no longer in space. He looks around to see that he's in, well, the force that's currently burning down to the ground. He immediately says, "So Cipher, I learned how to channel it, so how do I control it?" As he says this, Cipher says, "It's quite impressive that you managed to float off the ground while you were meditating. Honestly, it usually takes a few tries for newcomers." As he says this and looks at Izuku floating off the ground nonchalantly, as he stares at Cipher directly in the eye and says, "So, what do we do next?" Cipher says, "I want you to continue using your gravity, but not just on yourself, but on your surroundings. Try to make it to where you can control the force of gravity you're using. Don't want to accidentally send you flying into actual space instead of just your meditation realm." As Cipher says this, Izuku nods and starts to concentrate around the burning forest, which has finally stopped after all the trees were decimated after a few hours, and he's left there by himself to continue his training. POV change. Currently, Cipher is floating around and going to the city of Mustafa, wondering exactly how these humans react differently, or how these meatbags react differently compared to the ones that were in Gravity Falls. As he looks around, he sees humans doing stupid stuff. Someone on a motorcycle is literally screaming YOLO while trying to do what looks like a stunt with a ramp. And Cipher gets an idea. So he immediately snaps his fingers, and instead of the ramp that the man's heading towards, instead it's a random alien-looking creature with its mouth open, directly wide, as the man's eyes widen, and he goes directly into the creature's mouth, only to get chewed up by the entity. And Cipher snaps his fingers and starts to laugh hysterically, thinking that was hilarious, the face that he made at the end when he was being chewed into little pieces. As Cipher was thinking this and floating around and everyone staring at him, and one kid pointing at Bill saying, "Hey, it's a floating Dorito!" And he starts to walk up towards it, trying to eat it. While he tries to bite into the side of Bill, Bill just looks at him and says, "What is this creature?" as he flicks the kid in the face, and he just flies backwards into his mother. And while that happened, the kid luckily had a hardening quirk, as he was flung backwards towards his mother, and they did a crash collision. His mother was flung all the way into a store. So was the kid. The kid was on the ground in the store. He immediately got up and looked to the side where his mom was, only to see that parts of her were missing. Her entire upper half was gone. Bill Cipher flicked him so hard that right on impact, it directly severed her in half from when he ended up landing into her. After all, when he used his hardening, parts of his skin were a little bit too sharp, so it accidentally cut her in half. The kid looked towards his mom's upper half and walked towards her very slowly, his eyes in disbelief as he fell to the ground, holding on to the upper part of his mother, saying, Mom, wake up, Mom," as he started to shake her. As Cipher watched this and thought it was absolutely hilarious, as he was laughing and even snapped his fingers to have some popcorn in his hands, as he started to literally throw the popcorn into his eye, which he ends up literally ripping out, and it forms a mouth. He starts to eat the popcorn with his eye hole. And as he's doing this, he's literally laughing, saying, "This is hilarious." As people are watching the mayhem that just happened, as he looks around saying, "I wonder what else I can do," as he's floating around, just absolutely demolishing people, either by summoning random entities to murder everyone, or walking towards someone directly onto the ground, just walking towards them and trying to just see their reaction. He's just having an absolute ball field as reporters go onto the scene and see a Dorito just causing absolute mayhem, shooting eye lasers everywhere, destroying multiple buildings, and causing an absolute genocide, apparently, is what they're basically referring to it as, because this ain't just a massacre, as he literally destroyed more than half the city in just 10 minutes of being there. He ended up just floating around after a while, getting bored of the destruction for a few seconds, before seeing a person who was walking by him, very drunk-like, by the way, having an actual beer directly beside him, an actual thing of alcohol directly beside him in his hand. And as he's walking and trying not to tumble down, which Cipher finds hilarious because he tumbled down, accidentally fallen on the ground, and proceeded to get up and say, I think I might have just shat myself. As Cipher says, hey you, as he points towards the human. And the human says, yeah, Dorito Man. As Cipher says, I'm not Dorito Man. My name's Bill. And the man says something that actually makes Bill quite a little bit mad. As he says, oh wait, your name's Bill? Are you Bill the science guy? And as he says this, Bill gets mad and says, do I look like a meatbag? As he screams this, and his eye turns red, and he starts growing a little bit larger. Not too much, just a little bit, to where he's larger than the human in front of him. And his actual skin just starts to lose all color. And he starts to get more of a sinister voice as he says, do I look like a meatbag? He says it again. And immediately the man says, no, I just thought you might be Bill the science guy. I mean, I don't forget how he looks already. I mean, he might be a floating Dorito for all I know. I mean, also, where can I get a floating Dorito? You look pretty cool, actually. I like to have one as a pet. And as he says this, Cipher is literally having steam coming out of where his sides are, and he immediately is about to punch into him. As he punches the meat bag directly into the chest, his entire chest explodes, and it doesn't just explode into actual, blood, but it explodes into confetti. And the man just looks downwards at him, feeling intense pain, but instead says, why is there confetti? Where's my blood at? And he just starts laughing a little bit as Cipher says, how drunk are you? And the man just looks at him while Cipher still has his hand directly through his chest and says, I don't know. I mean, why are there so many of you? There's like 5 of you. As he sees 5 Bill Ciphers, and Cipher says, there's only one of me. And he just pulls his hand directly out of his chest, and the man falls to the ground, which confetti is literally flowing out of him. Don't even know how that's possible is what people are just looking at him and thinking how that's possible is what some of them are, which most of them are villains that were nearby. And a few of them are just running for their life, thinking they're just in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. And the people that are running for their life are the smart ones, because he looks around seeing people looking at him, and he says, what are you looking at? And one person says, I'm looking at you and him, and is he okay? Is this just like an illusion or something? Or is what one of them says stupidly. And he says, oh yeah, it's definitely an illusion, just like how you have multiple eyes. And the man says, I don't have multiple eyes. And then Cipher snaps his fingers, and he has thousands of eyes all over his body, all over his hands. He could see almost everywhere at the same time, and it started to drive him nuts as this was happening, because all these appendages were just randomly growing on his body, causing intense pain as his body started to rip into little pieces just to put the appendages in. There was even eyeballs inside of his body and his actual organs, which was absolutely terrifying, as the man actually started to grow a little bit bigger and bigger until he looked like he was about to explode. He had his tongue out because his tongue was growing bigger than his mouth was. And as his tongue was out, there was thousands of eyeballs on it. And Cipher just said, now you, go crazy, let loose. As he claps his fingers and says, pronto. As this monster he just created out of this man just started walking around and literally stabbing people with the sharp end of his tongue, and the eyes started shooting multiple lasers as if it was a light show, and Cipher just floated above the entire city watching the carnage that this monster is doing, until all of a sudden something catches his attention as he is floating all the way above, directly in the clouds to where no one can see him now. He sees this one man that has blonde hair and is quite muscular. Looks like he took a ton of steroids, is what Cipher says in his head, while starting to actually chuckle because this man's wearing spandex. And the man proceeds to run towards the monster and says, "Stop right there, villain," as the monster starts to scream incoherent words. But these incoherent words are actually screams of anguish, since the man is still alive, but he can't control his body. And as All Might ran towards the monster, all the monster did was slap him away with his tongue, causing him to fly into several different buildings, and ended up toppling them on top of innocent civilians. As this was happening, the city was burning around, because Cipher got bored of watching the man get absolutely destroyed by the monster he made, ended up setting the entire city on fire with blue flames. POV change. Currently, Izuku Midoriya is finally getting the hang of his gravity after a few times of accidentally sending a few rocks to the moon, which may have left a few craters, as he looks towards the moon, seeing more than half of it gone now, as it turned night. And more than half of it is gone now. And he says, that's a little bit more than a few craters, gotta admit, he says in his head, as he finally got the hang of it, and he looks behind him to see, in the distance, away from the forest that he's in, he sees the entire city of Mustafa burning down to the ground. Which, normally, the old Izuku would be horrified by this, or he would rush in to save someone, but no, this Izuku can't help but to look at the flames and the destruction around and start to laugh. He starts to laugh quietly at first, a little chuckle, until it starts to go into a full-blown hysterical laughter, as if it's the funniest thing on earth. As he stares into the destruction, thinking he wants to be there, he immediately floats off the ground and proceeds to literally fly all the way there. As he flies there, he notices directly as he's in front of the city, he notices multiple people being massacred by this monster with multiple eyeballs, which he finds quite horrendous actually, but he finds the destruction beautiful. So he thinks this creature may be just majestic. He stares at it as if it was a unicorn. And he was just on cloud 9 the entire time, until he feels a tap on his back and looks behind him and sees Bill Cipher. He says, "Oh, Bill. So, I see you're quite busy," as he looks at the city that's burning down to the ground and a bloodied All Might that's still fighting against the monster, as All Might and the monster are both on their last legs, and Izuku just stares at Cipher and says, "So you were quite busy after all. I'm finally managed to master gravity magic, so is there anything else you want to teach me?" As Cipher says, "You know what, I'll teach you something else," as he snaps his fingers and both of them disappear. As both of them disappear, POV change. Currently, All Might is fighting against this really large creature with multiple eyeballs, which is honestly quite creepy, to be honest. Has to be one of the creepiest villains he's ever fought. As he rushes towards it, trying to punch it, he gets literally slapped by the tongue and flown through seven separate buildings again. As each time he tries to charge at it, he just keeps on getting slapped into buildings, to the point to where he is very cautious and just decided to use his brain for once, which he's never really used for so long that he swore that dust came out of his ears. As he was thinking about what to do, he came up with a brilliant idea. He ran towards it and says, "If one hit doesn't work, then I just gotta hit it with multiple hits. And if I hit it hard and it doesn't work, then I just have to hit it harder." As he punches the creature, it actually flies back a little bit this time, as he starts to exert himself and use more of One For All, as One For All starts to actually harm his body, and he starts coughing up blood slightly as he rushes towards the creature, and the creature's multiple eyeballs literally pop out, and behind the eyeballs are tentacles, which pierce through the eyeballs and start to stab into the ground. And as it's stabbing into the ground, and the creature's lifting up both of its hands towards All Might, and some type of flame appears out of it, it starts to fire directly towards him. As All Might jumps to the side, avoiding a barrage of flames, he notices the tentacles that were planted on the ground, which he thought was for the force of his punch he was about to deliver, but instead all of the tentacles that were in the ground just sprung out directly behind All Might as he dodged. They went right behind him, and as he looked, because of his enhanced hearing, he saw they were all directly aimed at where his weak spot was from All For One, which he immediately started to think in his head, what do I do? All these people are counting on me. I can't stop here. As all of the tentacles with spikes on the end of them landed into All Might's weak spot, and he fell to the ground as this happened. In sheer pain, he started to force himself to stand back up, and he grabbed all the tentacles with spikes on the end of them and ended up pulling them closer to him, making it to where the creature who had the tentacles underground started to literally fall to the ground, crashing into it, as All Might looked at the creature and walked towards it. As he stretched the tentacles that were pierced his body directly out as he walked towards him, and the creature was just getting dragged even deeper down into the ground, as All Might was peering over it and charged as much as he could into his right hand and punched downwards. As soon as he punched downwards at the creature's head, it immediately exploded. And as it exploded, All Might yanked out all of the tentacles that pierced his body and screamed out a victory cry. And as he screamed out this victory cry, everyone around who was in the damage and destruction, who were crying over their lost and loved ones, looked at him, and some of them started to cheer, some of them kept on crying, some of them looked at the loved ones they would never see again, and a few kids were orphans after this incident. But All Might, at this moment, when he did that victory cry, he couldn't smile. For the first time in his hero career, the smile was not there. Only thing that was there was a face of absolute defeat. He may have won this battle, but he definitely lost more than he could have bargained for. This is part 3 of What If Deku and Bill Cipher made a deal. I hope you all like this, and let's just say part 4 is going to be a lot more intense. You're probably going to love it a lot more. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, especially you, Xether, if you're watching this. And see you all next time.